Welcome. Happy to see your smiling faces today. This is our celebration for the White Ridge Journal 2026. And we would have celebrated in June, but circumstances brought us to the end of August. So here we are in the dog days. We'll make a couple of announcements before we get started. We do have an event coming up. Encore Press has an event for Raven on September 10th for Joan Stone's book on dancing, gorilla dancer, and highly recommend this. And there's some flyers about her book here. So at the table, so help yourself. And we've also brought the older journals, previous journals. So if anybody doesn't have a copy and you want a copy of one of the older journals, just let us know and you can go home with one of those today. If we run out, we can always order one. So this is our current journal. The artwork on here is by Stephen Johnson, and he graciously did an interview for us, which is also in the back of the book. And then we also have interior artwork by Barbara Wadman-Peters. Let's give her a hand that she's here. And also by Bobby Powell and Marcine Felt. And you'll see that the contributing artists are listed at the front of the book. And it's Deb Ersick, Marcine Felt, Stephen Johnson, Bobby Powell, and Barbara Wadman-Peters. And let's also give a hand to Deb Ersick. Thank you, Deb. For contributing artwork. We love having artwork in the journal, right? The journal gives us a well-rounded thing of both poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, and art. So, gotta love it. And I'd like us to go ahead and just get started now. And I'm going to start by reading my piece. And then first the our essay writers are going to come up. And then we'll divide the poetry writers into two groups, and they can come up and pass the microphone down. And then we'll finish up with tall tales and short stories. Unfortunately, we had I'd advertised that we have the Persisters here today, but they were not able to come. They had a conflict, and my mistake for sending it out there to the world that they were coming when they couldn't come here today. So hopefully they'll come in another one. They do some great songs that fit with our theme of freedom and tyranny. So I want to just kind of open with thanking my staff as well, which was Beth Gully, and she did all the poetry editing. Can we thank her as well? Thank you, Beth. And Amber Fraley, who helps edit the journal and helps get it ready for print. And I couldn't do anything without her. Thank you, Amber Fraley. And I'll start with my thoughts on freedom. I called it liberty, and then I crossed it off because I was a little concerned about the language. Liberty, freedom. Well, do we want liberty or do we want freedom? And I decided it was freedom. We wanted freedom and justice for all. Funny thing about freedom, it is sometimes so treasured, so emotionally charged, that we will risk life and limb for it. Toss physical safety to the wind for the ineffable requirement of freedom. The most poignant stories are those of seeking and finally achieving freedom from captivity or the tyranny of others. These stories are second only to tales of saving someone else from oppression. Stories like The Great Escape, Papillon, The Shawshank Redemption, and many others. My own father escaped from Nazi prisoner of war camps during World War II. Recounted in a Wyoming cowboy in Hitler's Germany. People who escape brutal circumstances are viewed as heroes. Humans aren't the only mammals who value freedom. There are abundant examples of animals risking everything to save other animals. Nyalas are African antelopes. After a herd had been rounded up and trapped in a gated enclosure, their distress calls could be heard for miles. The night before they were going to be transported, a group of elephants actively rescued them. Michael Garstag, an emeritus research professor of environmental science at UVA, who studies elephant behavior, recounted the incident. The female matriarch of the herd came in and with her trunk unlatched the gate, opened it, stood aside, and let all these Nyalas out. The whole lot. Now why, he asks, I'm reasoning they were able to pick up on the distress calls of these Nyalas, and they went to their aid. It would have been purely altruistic, because this is a different species. They even have something to lose because they eat some of the same food. I think it was done because these animals have emotions, and they react to emotions, and they even react to the emotions of others. It's not just big-brained mammals. Freedom is so important, so intrinsic to life, that rats will skip eating chocolate to rescue other rats. Neurobiologist Peggy Mason of the University of Chicago, who studies rat behavior, has witnessed many acts of heroism among rodents. Yes, rodents. Not only will rats frantically work to free their trapped cage mate, they will do so even when there is a tempting little pile of chocolate chips nearby, the studies reveal. Instead of leaving their pal in the trap and selfishly gobbling up the candy all by themselves, rats will free their cage mates and share the chocolate. Many are amazed that animals will help others, including other species, that they can be so altruistic, so humane. I am amazed that many humans are not altruistic. They don't seem to feel empathy when others are hurting or trapped. I've listed a few things from FDR in this, and here's one quote. FDR's four freedoms, F-O-U-R freedoms, outlined in 1941, include freedom of speech and expression, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. I know an elderly woman who attended a meeting with other community members here to try to prevent a detention center from being built in their community here in Kansas. In her late 70s, she behaved with decorum. A few days later, two plainclothes FBI agents showed up at her door. Luckily, she knew her rights. When they asked her to identify herself, "You are Miss Mabel, aren't you?" I changed her name. She answered, "I don't have to tell you who I am. Do you have a warrant, young man?" "We know you're Miss Mabel. We have a few questions we'd like to ask you." "I don't have to answer your questions. Mabel has read the Bill of Rights. She knows a warrant grants authority to search, seize, and/or arrest. It does not compel any answers to questions." The two agents turned and walked away. Miss Mabel, understanding American law, followed them out of the door and photographed their license plate to give to ACLU lawyers. She stepped up to assert her rights because this country's founders created ways to combat the taking of freedoms. They enacted laws meant to protect we the people. She knows rules and laws can force even fools and villains to act within limits. The first freedom is the freedom of speech, according to FDR, and expression. Everywhere in the world. That's what he said, 1941. Miss Mabel had gathered with others to make her views known. She doesn't believe it is, quote unquote, American to incarcerate people without due process, and is willing to speak out. She is surprised by those on the, quote, other side, unquote, and wonders how anyone can support locking people up in violation of our established standards. Miss Mabel asks, how can there be two sides to this issue? Something so treasured, so emotionally charged as freedom. Mabel is particularly concerned because a large number of the detention centers are run by private prison corporations, including GEO Group and Core Civic. Their focus is profit, making lots of money. And that money comes from government payments per detainee. The more people they lock up, the more money they make. Mabel said, "My taxes are contributing to tearing families apart and imprisoning people in violation of our Constitution." Mabel shakes her head. They don't have the right to lock these people up. Court cases like Zarvitis and versus Davis confirm Mabel's assertion that it is a violation to imprison people, to take their freedom arbitrarily and without due process. However, private contractors such as Core Civic do have the liberty and have been given great incentive to lock up lots of people in reportedly very poor conditions. Core Civic has the right to make a buck. Stockholders, including BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, and others, want to make some money. The rub lies in the difference between liberty and freedom. The distinction between liberty to and freedom from. Liberty to speak versus freedom from hate speech. You can't tell me what I can or can't say. I have my liberties. Liberty to bear arms versus freedom from stray bullets. Liberty to burn your own trash and dispose of your stuff in any way you want to versus freedom from air and waterborne toxins. Liberty to take pleasure however you want versus freedom from molestation and rape. Liberty to make a profit versus freedom from unconstitutional imprisonment. Liberty, too, is limited only as far as our governmental representatives are able and desire to create and enforce laws and regulations. Nagel was born a generation after President Franklin D. Roosevelt took action to lift people out of poverty during the Great Depression. He bridled business to free individuals, balancing the relationships between business, labor, and government. He reintroduced limits on corporate power while preserving a market economy. His actions led to the creation of the most prosperous and world-envied middle class in modern history. Big business has been fighting against the New Deal ever since, and they've made great strides recently. Today, ordinary people and corporations share many constitutional rights, but wealth and legal power determine who can exercise those rights. Rights are meaningful only when people can use them in practice, not just possess them on paper. Too often, freedoms primarily protect the wealthy and connected, which is why ordinary people must organize together to defend and exercise constitutional rights. Although freedom and liberty are oddly opposed, freedom's call will not wane. This is why, despite all efforts to provoke fear through threat and propaganda, Ms. Nagel will tell you the act of locking people away is very unpopular among her friends and neighbors. I will be attending another community meeting, she says, regardless of the visiting FBI agents. Nagel reminds me of Pastor Martin Niemöller, his words of warning after World War II. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Nagel wants to protect her freedoms by advocating for the rights of others. Some people who were once considered legally present in the U.S. had their status changed in 2025. Those changes were executive decisions, not Congress-made decisions, not made by we the people. Asylum seekers and others previously considered to be in the U.S. under valid visas are being rounded up, their families being torn apart, and their lives destroyed. The second freedom, is the freedom of every person to worship God in his own way, everywhere in the world. The third freedom is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings that will secure to every nation a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. In mid-2025, ICE was detaining roughly 56,000 to 58,000 people per day. The Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse showed that as of June 15, 2025, they held 56,391 people, with 71% had no criminal conviction. More recent reports indicate that number has risen. Leaked ICE data analyzed by the Cato Institute found that roughly 73% of individuals booked into ICE custody had no criminal conviction, and nearly half had neither a criminal conviction nor pending criminal charges. The fourth freedom is freedom of fear, freedom from fear. And this means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor. FDR, 1941. I'm going to wrap this up here, sorry. Ms. Nagel warns, if they can lock up these people, who will they lock up next? Nagel's question makes me wonder if the elephants who rescued the Nyalas weren't altruistic at all. Perhaps they They freed their fellow range mates, knowing that their own freedom depended on it. It was actually selfish. They understood that their lives were interrelated. All for one, one for all. So liberty to versus freedom from defines our moment in time, our era right now. Authors and artists in this issue of The Bright Bridge tackle this emotional topic of freedom and the thing that thwarts it, tyranny, head on in the following pages. In Minutemen for Freedom, David Hand recounts how 77 Minutemen began the colonists' fight for freedom against the mighty British Empire. In Invisible Tyrant, Gloria St. John tackles the tyranny of old age. Fiction includes Poltergeist by Mike Stubbs, about attending your own funeral. Prince Charlie by Colin Sinclair is about Scots and Irishmen who formed a combined battalion, grim in their tartans and bonnets, and fiercer than any company of naked scouts. Poetry includes such powerful pieces as Consider the Lilies by Annette Hope Billings, Allegiance by Julianne Baker Grimm, and Springtime in America by Patricia Davis Muppet, and more. Some authors tackled this topic with humor. Check out Kim Ashley's short story, The Diagnosis, and America is the Worst Group Project Ever by Boyd Bowman. Excellent and hilarious. Also included is the interview of renowned artist and author Stephen T. Johnson. May you enjoy this issue and be inspired by the expressions within. Amber and David, you want to come up with it?
Yeah. You want to go first?
It's a little sensitive.
Yeah.
Well, Kansas was a beacon of freedom.
Yes. This paper slightly changed from what is in the book here because it's 2026 and I wrote this essay in 2025. That's not going to change with the rest. Minutemen for Freedom. On April 19, 1775, 77 Minutemen began the colonists' fight for freedom against the mighty British Empire. Later, 700 colonists joined the fight. They had no chance of winning. Yet their love of freedom left them courage. Now, in 2026, 251 years after that battle, we have Republicans in the House and senators, Republican senators cowering in their offices for fear of being primaried when they run for re-election. Or maybe they have just forgotten their oaths of office and what the battle of Lexington was all about. British troops were on their way to seize and destroy armed and rebellious colonists in 1775, and courageous everyday men and women of what would become the United States rose up to stop them. Now in 2026, Trump and his minions are on their way to seize and destroy our Constitution. The Republican office holders are uniquely stepping aside. For more than 2.5 centuries, everyday Americans have put their lives on the line to save our country. Where is it courage today? Certainly not in the offices and hearts of Republican senators and representatives. In 1980, Archie Dykes, then Chancellor of the University of Kansas, sought to seize and destroy control of free speech at the university. Dykes wanted to outlaw student newspapers on the Lawrence campus. Several graduates of KU gathered to protest such a violation of First Amendment rights with the 1980 graduate commencement. We call it the commencement offensive. We passed a brochure protesting Dykes' action and then gathered again at the topmost row of seats at the KU stadium. You couldn't get any further away unless you were out of the stadium. We held up banners that said, "Protect the First Amendment rights at KU. Protect free speech at KU," and others. This was too much for the chancellor to tolerate. He instructed the University of Kansas police to seize the banners, which the KU police did, not being too careful to avoid injuring protesters. I was struck in the mouth, and the same officer stepped on the hand of the woman next to me. Another protester had his wrist broken during the attack. It took several months and the replacement of Chancellor Dykes for the university to formally announce its tolerance for free speech at KU. Now, in 2026, 46 years after our protest supporting free speech at KU, a fellow president is using the full power of the presidency to intimidate universities and their students. Going so far as to have masked men seize some students without charge, suing various media providers and individuals working for them, stirring up some of his followers to threaten office holders and judges who dare to force their disagreement with Americans' would-be dictators. We still need the spirit of those original men and women today. And we need to support candidates for office who embrace the ideals of those men and women who 251 years ago stood shoulder to shoulder together to fight tyranny.
Thank you, David. My essay is called May the Odds Be Ever in Our Favor. My husband Jim and I recently rewatched the Hunger Games movie. Before the movies, we read the trilogy of books. The Hunger Games was released in 2012, back when it was still pleasurable to watch or read dystopian fiction, because we were all safe in the knowledge that nothing like that could ever happen here. Rewatching it in 2026, I was amazed at how it seemed more like documentary than fiction. It's no longer fun to watch, at least not in the same way. Now it functions as an outlet for the frustration in watching our rights disappear. We still cheer for the heroes, but now it hits different. There's a visceral satisfaction when the citizens of Pan Am hit back at the state. President Snow, the villain of the piece, is more like Trump than I'd ever realized. Sure, Snow is more collected and not the clown that Trump is, but the similarities cannot be denied. Snow uses technology not only to police and punish his people, but to spread disinformation to the masses. In the books and movies, the Hunger Games are marketed to the people as a necessary evil, and much of the public revels in the competition and violence of the games themselves. In fact, the name Pan Am comes from the Latin phrase Panem et circenses, bread and circuses. Bread and circuses is what that translates to. The story Snow tells his people is the cruel, deadly competition of the Hunger Games is a solution to their civil war, organized violence on an entertaining, small scale, as opposed to mass death. Maybe that's why so many Americans are so unbothered by and even entertained by ICE. They watch the videos on social media and cheer them on. Like Trump, Snow promotes himself as a peacemaker by ruling through intimidation and fear. I also found it fascinating that in the Hunger Games movies, President Snow smells bad. The story is that he takes the same poisons he uses against his political enemies so they won't suspect him of poisoning them. Snow then takes the antidote to whatever poison he's using, but the antidotes don't always work, which means his mouth is full of open, stinking sores. To cover the smell, he wears powerfully fragrant, genetically modified roses in the lapel of his jacket. Of course, we've all heard the rumors that Trump is incontinent, wears a diaper, and frequently soils himself in public. The result is he supposedly smells like a sewer. Unlike Snow, Trump is apparently too vulgar and rude to give a damn by wearing a rose in his lapel. Like Trump, Snow comes from a wealthy family, and his supporters are the wealthy elite. The biggest difference between Trump and Snow is Snow wasn't elected. Snow became president through cunning manipulation and murder. Trump has managed to make himself a cult leader, not by promising the Hunger Games, but by promising a return to open racism and misogyny. Trump's illegitimate Supreme Court has now gutted abortion rights, eliminated diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and made a significant dent in the Voting Rights Act. Of course, all of this is in response to the crime of the country electing our first Black president. In my white ignorance, I thought electing a Black man was a sign the country was progressing. I knew conservative Americans weren't happy about having a black president, but I thought they'd soften once they realized he did a good job. Apparently, 30% of Americans have been stewing since then, plotting their revenge. They're striking out at everyone who allowed a black man to be elected in a country they saw as being white-owned. What's chilling about what's happening now is a majority of Americans voted for this. They voted to gut their own rights and add more rights to the billionaire class. It seems about 30% of the population not only desires, but needs to be lorded over. Never did I understand before now that for some, freedom feels like a prison. Or perhaps, freedom feels like chaos to those who crave fealty. Listening to conservative women, especially, repeat the rhetoric they've been fed their whole lives that they are second-class citizens, unworthy of equal rights, has been the most gobsmacking to me. Watching them gleefully vote our collective rights away has been maddening. When the Senate failed to pass the SAVE Act, which would require American-born women who have taken their husbands' names to show more identification to vote than their husbands, I wasn't elated. I couldn't be. I could not celebrate my country grudgingly granting me the most basic of human dignity. I also did not celebrate when Kansas voted 60% to 40% to protect abortion rights for the same reason. A male friend of mine crowed about the amazing election numbers, but all I could see is that 40% of Kansas, way too close to half, would still give more rights to rapists and embryos than my daughter. That's not something to be celebrated. My whole life I've loved fiction. Perhaps never before have I so viscerally understood how much stranger life than fiction can be. Now, if we can have the poets come up and sit down here. The first six? Oh, okay. There's a schedule here if you didn't get one. I see Pulaski, I'll get you one.
Okay.
But first up in the poets is our very own Julie Ann Baker Bryn. And she is not only going to read her selection from the Right Bridge, but she's got a few poems also from her brand new book, which I have deemed the poetry collection of the summer because it is brilliant. She's out here just killing it. The Sigh and Flutter, there are copies available here for purchase. So yes.
So who's missing? I've got one missing.
Brian.
Oh, Brian. Brian's not here yet. Let's go with, we can grab some next one in line.
The next one in line.
Thank you, Amber. Well, thank you, Mickey, and everybody who builds community. I really enjoy coming up to these events. I live in the Wichita area, and it's still a little bit nerve-wracking, but it's good to see so many familiar faces that have been in Prana journals over the years, and I'm honored to be amongst you all. This is how we defeat the evil robots, by the way, is community events like this. It seems like that subject comes up a lot. I think I'll actually start from my poem and this issue and segue into my book stuff, if you don't mind, because try to stay on theme. So my day job is with Wichita Public Radio. I'm not on the air, but still working in public broadcasting. We need to be careful about not being politically divisive, not being partisan about that, anything. So my piece is a micro poem, and it's metaphorical, so take from it what you will. Allegiance. And this is a quote. Weave me a rope that will pull me through these impossible times. That's Tim Finn. No matter the cloth at the top of the flagpole, its roughness of fabric, nor starkness of design, the rope still sings in the sunshine, dances with the wind, prevails through the storm. I have a short attention span. All of these are pretty darn short. Everything fits on one page in this book, And thanks to Mickey for publishing it. Thanks to Beth, where did Beth go, for editing, yes. I noticed Kevin Rabus also has a piece in this issue, but he's not here today. He's got an engagement in Kansas City. He was one of the amazing people who said nice things about it for me. The Kansas Authors Club has been very supportive too. I meant to put them over there by my ridiculous amount of swag. I kind of went crazy. It's my first book, so I didn't know what to do. I had, please, free, take them. Bookmarks, posters, notepads, stickers. Okay, most of them are useful, not the stickers. I just like stickers. So. All right, so my book is, it's poetry, so it's kind of about life, the universe, and everything. I try to really focus more on gratitude. There's really not a lot of political stuff in here, but there are a few pieces that maybe would work with today. So I kind of think about how some people are happy to give up their freedoms for a sense of security. And this is kind of about that. It's called unboxing. There is always, always an outlier. We want to make a box or a rule, at least a generalization or maybe a stereotype. Okay, so fine, we do that. We do that to appease our lizard brain or something, and we feel a happy little sense of order, a predictable pattern of always fulfilled expectations until the unfulfillment occurs. That is, if we allow ourselves to observe, to realize, to admit it doesn't fit. One of those things is not doing what we thought. We try to shove it back in the box. Kind of a cautionary tale, I suppose. Kind of about my own OCD something. This is kind of a similar, we want to keep our loved ones safe. It's called protect your loved ones. You can't keep them in an airplane black box. They'll incinerate under the hot sun. You can't keep them in a giant sterile bubble. They'll just float away. You can't keep them in a safe room. They'll run out of water and food. You can't keep them in a hospital bed. They'll be poked and prodded at all hours. You can't keep them in a tornado cellar. They'll never see the sky. You can keep them in your mind, heart, and soul. They'll protect you right back. Sorry, I'm taking up like this entire area. Feel free to get out the shepherd's crook and yank me off the stage. Yeah, these are short. So more of these, I think, kind of speak to freedom. Not so much tyranny, but this is one I kind of think maybe sort of goes with the theme of freedom. It's called Applied Animal Behavior. One day it's glitter on my neck, the next a sequin on your pillow, and here now a random silver thread on the bathroom floor. Oh, how I do laugh at attempts to remake myself into some kind of rainbow fish, a sunbeam with gossamer wings, a golden-cheeked warbler, or any other graceful exotic creature, all to camouflage my salamander paleness, my globefish swollenness, my gypsy moth plainness, to hide the fact that I am merely human, that I cannot fly. Time for 2 or 3 more short ones. Sure. Overnight. In my dreams, I am tall and elegant, bold and purposeful, swift and decisive. I eat chocolate with no consequences. I speak deeply, meaningfully with my past loves, current love, future loves, alternate universe love, celebrity loves. I float and fly and control darkness and light and don't suspect until the last second that I cannot stay. So when I was younger, I used to think that tyranny was parenting, that, they had all the freedoms and they got to do whatever they want. Of course, now I know that's not true, but so this is the point of view of my inner child. Grown up art museum. The little girl is still too young to understand, but Mama brings her along anyway with Auntie to help. She wants to run through the cavernous galleries, glide across the gleaming floors, hear her own sparkling voice echoing the halls. She so much wants to touch the textured ornate frames, grab from the colorful fruit bowl. Oh, look, is that a black kitty cat? Other visitors glance and glare, but perhaps she has the right idea. Perhaps this spirit should be encouraged. Perhaps the little girl is me. So I'll do one more. This is one that lots of people like, and it was actually included in an on-car press journal. Trying to think. Perilous and playful was the theme. So sorry if you've heard this before. When did you first realize you wanted to be a helium balloon? That's the title. Oh, my teenage years, definitely. I was so deflated. There was all this angst, heaviness, low morale. But I knew somehow, in my heart, my lungs, that I was more flexible, that I could embrace lightness, breathe deeply, rise above. I could expand my horizons and maybe inspire others to do the same. I envisioned a world of multicolored beauty, everyone floating, laughing, gasping, in surprise, embracing the sky. All right. Do I need to introduce Shelley Barnhill next on the list here? I don't know how to introduce you. Should I pull out your bio and then?
Just say Shelley.
Just say it's Shelley. Come on in. Hi, I'm Shelley Barnhill.
Mickey asked for something kind of humorous. So, in my life, I have lots of smiles. But there is tyranny. Tyranny, cruel, unreasonable, or arbitrary use of power or control. Yeah, I understand that definition. I have a cat. I've been wakened at 5 o'clock in the morning with the demand of chin scratches. And I have provided the contentment of finding that spot. Do I need to mention the meowing and yowling for the demanding of being fed? Or how I feel when the food is merely sniffed at and the tyrant turns tail to walk away? A lofty waving tail adds insult of the prominent cat star to emphasize the disgust of the feline. Oh, I might mutter, oh, starve. But do I mean it? No, I relent and find another flavor. In the evening, my arm gets tapped for when the treat is commanded, and I obey. I've been yelled at when I walk to a far part of the yard that no cat should go. And then again, when the bird feeder is empty, obedience is demanded immediately. I have even been told when to go to bed. This is tyranny. Tyranny, I say. Or is it the freedom to love a cat? And that hope builds.
May I? Oh, it's moving.
We are being broadcast on Facebook, Watkins Facebook,
Oh.
FYI.
I am so happy to be here this afternoon. I am happy to be anywhere but 6 feet under decomposing. On February 6th, while I was sitting at a little restaurant in Topeka eating onion rings, I had myself a stroke. And here I am today sharing poetry with friends and fellow poets. Consider the lilies. I consider the lilies of the field, who toil not, neither do they spin. Their beauty halts me in my fearful tracks, though headlines report there's no time to stop and smell anything. I marvel at flowers who ask only sun, soil, and rain in return for such brave beauty. These moments of appreciation send a hush over the cacophony of terror that blasts my days. Before I trudge on to my next battle, dressed in my Kevlar vest, I nod thanks. Anyway, kiss ready, Kiss. I like to stay kiss ready, primed to pucker, purposely positioned to press lips, my mouth ever so slightly parted, so that mid-kiss you might slip me a red lifesaver. I stay kiss ready, poised to stand close with no air to spare, and I keep my tongue on call, lest the French want red kissing in a blue state. I bare my shoulders in hopes someone is inexplicably drawn to that exact spot of utter surrender below my right clavicle. I stay kiss ready, so no fullness of lips is wasted. Now, to be clear, I do not need to be bedded or wedded. I want only to be kissed, so I keep myself kiss ready. Though countless days have passed since the last sweet conjunction of my mouth against another's, I am still hopeful. And during kiss preparation, if you would, oh my God, just hold my hand for a moment. All will be right with this world, and in the meantime, I will stay kiss ready. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patricia Davis Muffet.
Yeah, that's good. Let's get back a little bit.
Okay.
It's on wheels.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna read the piece from here and then one other. I have quite a few political poems. I was lucky enough to have a piece included in Best American Poetry 2025 that was an eco poetry piece, but also I have a lot of things about human rights, and so I have a piece about human rights after one from the journal. So, Springtime in America, 2025. If you live beside your fear, eventually it makes itself at home. Not like the loyal dog who lies there quietly, thumping his dark tail in appreciation of a glance. No, not like that. More like the ornery cat, so angry with the world, so sure of his place, that he leaps onto the bed, curls his furred body against bare skin, disappears to your noticing, letting you breathe, sleep, read the awful news of every morning. Don't be fooled by his warmth and stillness. He waits for the whiff of prey or danger, for the rumbling of his own hunger, ready with sharpened claws to dig into tender flesh. Or, in the middle of the night, he will leap to the bedside table, shove your water glass off the ledge, shattering the darkness with the sound of breakage. Still, when morning dawns, you will find him quiet at the door, his silky body winding between your legs, and you recognize his weakness, how he depends on you. So you let him leap to the countertop, feed him tuna. You run your palm over his soft body, making your peace with his presence. This one is coming out in the next issue of Helix that's coming out very soon. I have 3 trans kids, and this one is about my oldest and my youngest trans kids. Unwelcome. I am only 1 cup of coffee in, and the text says, "This is the military recruiter for your local high school. How can I help your student achieve their goals?" And I am tempted to do what I have done so many times before and put the phone down and leave them on red, but not today when my older trans kid has just heard that he did not get the science gig in England and his lab is losing its funding and he is waiting for the hammer of an unsolicited replacement passport to drop and wondering if all those years in the lab recording his data, drinking coffee for 36 hours straight, making other researchers worry are worth nothing now. And today I am speaking at the International Women's Day event at work, and suddenly the signs don't say the word women anymore. But no one has told me anything, and the silence is thick in here, and I am tempted to let the recruiter just do his job, and I do feel sorry for all the vitriol I'm sure he gets. But then I remember the limbo when the funding for my son's PhD was on hold, and he is legally male, and this is a state school, and any man getting funding must be registered for the draft, and he is not allowed to register and has to spend months begging for a letter that says he is unwelcome in the military. And I am typing now, and I am saying, please leave my family alone because my kid is trans, and there is nothing you can do to help any of us. And I am imagining another ending where 2020 Republicans found their morals and voted to convict. And in this ending, I have the decency to just say no thank you, like my mother taught me. And on the panel, I am asked how to survive when it is clear that someone thinks you're worthless. And I hear myself say, what a great question. And I search for some useful advice about how to stay. And I finally stop searching and I think about my answer to the recruiter and I look this woman in the eye and I say, run. Next up, we have, yeah.
Hello. I just want to mention I'm like a huge nerd, all right? Break the tie. I have an unreliable narrator in the Tyranny and Freedom Journal. I'm an English major, so I'm big on like deconstruction and post-structuralists and Jacques Derrida and like questioning the meta-narratives. Like we learn from our mistakes. Do we really? They keep like electing, Republicans and they do it. Democrats come back, put it together, and then Republicans. So, and I use the image of a plastic sack to question those meta-narratives. And the meta-narratives that I'm going to question are finding a center in religion or learning from our mistakes, and then I slapped it all together into a poem that I wrote because I've become quite an intentional writer. And it takes a lot of time and effort. This is called an unreliable narrative. A plastic sack caught in a spin. Look how it twirls on the axis of a whirlwind, mortified. How it cannot contain the thought of its own demise, or never rethinks to amend, just draws lines in the sand. How it attempts to make some sense from something it has found anew. How it turns in indecision, having nothing to cling to, no acrylic center with which to hold it still, only centripetal motion, only a hole in the warmth to feel. Thanks. And I wrote this, took me a little bit, I've been trying to slap some undercurrents, I read this Telemachus by Ocean Bond, it's just absolutely amazing. You get a chance to read Telemachus by Ocean Bond, take the time. It's ridiculously awesome. Telemachus, of course, was Odysseus' son. And so, I've been writing intentionally on this, and I wrote this, and the undercurrent, the theme is Icarus, of course, but I'm going to change tones in the middle of this poem. I'm going to do a philosophical musing. I'm going to do like a concrete that slaps into a little bit of abstract, and I'm going to go back to a philosophical musing. And then I'm going to move into like surreal, ethereal, or dreamlike. And then I'm going to go back to a philosophical musing, and then I'm going to come back into reality. And it's not really didactic. It's more like Icarus. What was the theme of Icarus? Don't set your dreams so high that you die losing them. Why? I took a spin off on that. I don't know about that. All that. It's called the glare. Because sometimes these dreams are nothing more than a flicker beyond the distant stars I see, and I needed to get closer. Because I knew success would elude me unless I flew too close to the sun. So I take what little I have and to give, a mince of courage, a chink in the armor, a wisp of persistence, wax, flax, feather, and gather these into hands, into fingers, nimble at the chance. And with ready thread sutured these items into a slipstream of quasi-sentience. Because I only have this here, and I don't know where I will go after. Because without dreams, where would I be? Amid that lack of magic in this theater of scenes. Now if I fail, I'll get caught by the wind. Now if I fall, I'll get caught by the wind, as the breeze blows enough to give feathers their intention. Through the smooth air they glide, as I wag my smug wingtips from side to side, then lean in and fuse with the wind to pierce the upper atmosphere where the sun presides over its dominion. Because I've never felt as if I've belonged anywhere except here. Because satisfaction is for those who cannot conceive the concept of wings. But during, I forget that I have put the work in, have rolled the ego thin and pliable enough to keep suggestions coming in fresh without resentments and beat. So I swerve toward that blazing star, and as my wings disintegrate, I flounder and bounce off the ground in the loss of what once was staggering know-how. And after a fed-up sigh and a good, what else can I do but laugh, I go back to poking around and prodding nests to collect more feathers. Thanks.
Thank you. It was my privilege to get to read all the poetry in advance. You guys are awesome. This is a pantoum, which just means it repeats in a weird way. So I invite students to read. I invite students to read an essay on old people using smartphones, another one about medical maggots, an essay on old people. I can tell they don't read. Another one about medical maggots. They are not shocked. I can tell they don't read. They are not moved to empathy. They are not shocked. They don't know why there's a turtle. They are not moved to empathy using smartphones. They don't know why there's a turtle. I invite students to read. And this is called In the Margins. Do you think your beautiful answer to that question is terrifying? And this one I think is another kind of humble attempt at answering that question. What do we do? In the margins, look for the helpers, Mr. Rogers said, when you need hope in a horrible situation. This morning, amid news of the war between Hamas and Israel and the perennial crush at the end of the fall semester, helpers peek from behind the scenes. Jordanian soldiers, famous for carrying Syrian grandmothers through no man's land to safety from ISIS, once again appear on the scene with a field hospital to set up in Gaza, while all appearances no one else is doing anything to help civilian Palestinians. In an introduction to writing class, a desperate student who has failed at both getting his keys out of the car before he locked it and bringing money to buy gas, makes it to class just in time to tell his story before it's time to leave. But a student from across the room hands over his last $5 to keep a fellow human from being stuck. Helpers hang out in the margins, hiding in plain sight. And we're ready for the next group, I think.
For next poets, if you haven't read any more poets, please come up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess I'm next. Before I read, I want to share some strange things that are happening that apparently are in my life, but it's not my life. At the moment, 2 publishers are nearing the end of editing 2 different books of mine. And one of them has poems and the other one doesn't. The first one is a novella that is a fictional story based on the summer I was 13. I wrote it 12 years ago before my mother died, and I forgot about it. And this publisher was after me. I want to do another book of yours. I want to do another book. And I remembered it, so I sent it to him. So it's almost done, probably about out in a month or so. And then Barnes & Noble Publishing is doing a memoir, a real memoir of mine. And that's going a little slower because it's over 100,000 words. And I have not written anything like that. It just goes up to college. So anyway, I need to share that because it's not my life. I mean, that didn't happen to me. It happens to other people, so I don't know what's going on. So I'm trying to make it real. Anyway, my poem in this issue is called Hidden Poem. I can just print it now. Quietly and slowly, unnoticed by most, an alternative social system is created, practiced by ordinary people around the world. Not in the news, not causing conflict. They create systems, institutions, and network connections. When great powers fall, the unimportant and dismissed continue in their new way, survive and thrive, and new civilization grows. And that's a process that's happened several times in the US. And then maybe said I could read something else. I decided to bring this one. This is the second issue of a journal called Epistle, And I like to send things when I know about it to beginning journals like this because they would be happy to receive something. And there's less competition because everybody knows. So I'm going to spoil that by saying that a third issue, the deadline is the end of August, which I just learned last night. And so I sent them stuff last night because I work to deadlines. I don't work ahead of time. Oh, it's tonight? I got 15 minutes. Okay. What can I do? So this one is sort of along the lines of the other one. This is called Upon Reading and. A poet speaks into the winds of time, another hears and responds. As time goes, others join in. A conversation through the ages, mind upon mind, and humanity grows richer for the listening. Such action fights the darkness of ignorance and destruction.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I never sick. My last publication was Sunshine in the Weeds. That is a poetry book that was published by Clark Press. Right now I'm working on a novel with Hazel Hart. And it's been a real growth experience for me because she's a professional. So it's been a lot of fun. I am going to read a Senru haiku. Everyone knows what that is, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Hero surrounded by big wolves in sheep's clothing, power, greed, cunning, ruse of diplomacy, pungent smell of cowardice, smug oligarchy. The world's richest man, 38 billion profits, conflict of interest, made America great. Just sacrifice your freedoms. Give the wolf a crown. And the art was a poster. They were looking for more art, so I sent a poster in that I used to use in my window for Veterans Day. And I'm going to let you all read that in the book because I wanted to read a different poem. This is called Out of Order. He has witnessed the hell of war. Why aren't you wearing a suit? He asked for transparency and assurance. He is ostracized for not saying thank you. He has thanked the president. He has thanked America. Did our overzealous politician need personal praise? Where's our diplomacy? You who represent the people, who is the bully in the room? America, take up your pens. Raise your voices against those who say they speak for us. Those that use fear and intimidation to achieve power, in bullying a true hero.
No, it's okay.
Our leadership is out of order.
Our leaders are out of order.
Hello, I'm M. Pulaski Moore, and it's an honor to be here and be able just to share this poetry with you all in this journal, this wonderful effort. It's so important My poem that is included here is titled Mel's Trombone. Mel's trombone is blowing the blues of slavery. Mel's brass sound is timbral, a tender tenor, a crystal cry, venerable voice, falling, rising, blaring, blazing. Mel's trombone is trumpeter, thunderer of military marches, beats, pride, sorrow. For starving, homeless sojourners who pass through restless valleys, barefoot with no traveling shoes, we wipe the miles away when Mel blows his horn. Mel's trombone breathes, lends the cultural cries of forgotten peoples, lands unknown. It is bohemian muse for ancestral streams of bright, crisp colors, hazy haute control style, shaping generations. Brother, sister, listen to the music, the fading, floating crescent notes of moon tides, moon cries, of concave dreams of dark hounds chasing slave sounds, of rhythmic ghosts and sad refrains, of sweet harmonies simmering in a haunting haze of yesterday once more. And I would like to, when they said we could read another poem, I was really just conflicted what I would like to share. But one of the things that has really bothered me lately is we're talking about tyranny and is the erasure of history. And so I am, a lot of people, there are certain points that people don't want to hear, but this is part of our history, American history. And what in the erasure, we have to speak about these things and keep these things going. So this is a poem that was inspired by the artist, American artist John Wilson's mural, The Incident, which was painted in Mexico because it could not be painted here in the United States. And I encourage you to look up the images of it. It is a depiction of a racial terror in the United States and an African-American family witnessing a lynching. Thunderous gunshots shake the scandalous night. White-robed figures whoop, holler, kick up dust, shout, cheer, celebrate. Their voices are thunder, terror tearing asunder any dreams of peace. There is a flurry of fabric, flapping waves of white, whipping, snapping like flags. The hanging rope is cut. The tether unravels, scrapes, whips away from the branch. The limp body, the lynched, flails, falls, hits the ground with a thud, hollow, deep, a resonance reaching beyond the fields. Through the window, Papa sees, stares. Angrily, he clenches The shotgun with each heartbeat rage pounds, pulsates, thumping loudly in his ears. Crackle, pop, hiss. Outside, the cross is ablaze, communicating, carrying sounds of all things falling apart. Mama comforts, rocks, cradles the fragility of innocence. She hums quietly, her plaintive song of sorrow, a wish to escape, to fly away from the multitude of injustices. The mosaic of stolen voices, the indelible strains of echoes that continue to haunt and speak only of hate. Thank you. And our next poet is Mason Webb.
So, thank you for publishing the poem. I know you didn't really want to. Something like that. So, I've been thinking a whole lot lately about how kind of broken my brain is, and how this is like on purpose, and like the way that all of that works is that they're discapacitating people who are discapacitated under the current system. They're doing it to a further extent, and so but I like to do the zoom in, zoom out, right? Like, how big is the world? How small is my life? And mostly when I write poetry, I try to exclusively write about my own experiences. So this is, and you call it Fix It, which I generally don't title my poems. They're usually just based on whatever the date was that I wrote it. But you put Fix It, and that'll do. I don't have anything nice to say about Portland. Home of rampant neo-Nazism, scared of its own shadow, refusing to assess its own metrics, unexamined and proud of it. Piss poor behavior, and I'm not tired of talking about it. Buy another psychic for your dog. Let them tell you he needs more treats as validation, that he's a good boy for $1,000 fucking while your neighbor houses his alcoholic dad and runs a Pizza Hut with his master's degree. Go ahead. I don't have anything good to tell you about Minneapolis. A black friend drove me to the Dick's Sporting Goods. I needed to buy a home protection shotgun and they wouldn't sell me slugs. Tell me you're racist without telling me you're racist. They brought me birdshot, but I left with buckshot because Minneapolis is full of people who would rather shoot you than help you. Cops. I mean cops. Minneapolis loves cops. Goddamn Lutherans. I can't keep moving and expecting that to fix it. It isn't the place, it's the culture, bereft of madness, full of madness. America is a cesspool that won't bleach its own asshole just to get fucked. Yes, I'm mad, but I'm not fucking wrong. Jesus isn't the answer, but we're also dirty as hell in spirituality. So fine, Jesus in Oklahoma, a pile of frat boys threatening the slurry stranger, backing up their only black friend isn't a sign of wokeness, it's friendship, however you take it. Being friends with Jesus or the Buddha won't do entirely. They're fucking dead. Fuck off with that rhetoric. Find the living and fix it. Michelle said I could read one more thing, and I wrote, yeah, it's been a hot second because my brain is fire. It's been a hot second since oh my God, what are you doing? It's been a hot second since I wrote something, so let me see if I can find the thing that I wrote literally yesterday. Again, on the zoom in, zoom out, I zoom in as hard as possible when I write, mostly because I only mean to speak for me. I'm not trying to speak for everybody. I think that's part of what poetry's about. So I walked out of my house and found a dead bird, and I hung out with my skunk friend. Then I went to a dance party. So that was my evening last night. So here we go. And here I am, blowing smoke over your dead body, as a consecration, as a prayer, not knowing what else to do because nothing is to be done, tears or no tears. Your beautiful feathers still intact, shining even, neither invaded by ants nor decay, simply here, in a place of vulnerability that I in no way can ameliorate. If that in any way is a consolation, you are still so beautiful as I join you. Unable to leave you alone in this state, neither can I join you. And yet I tarry, whether for your sake or for mine, or both, always an option. We ponder death so much more than life, or parts of life and partials. Should we go dancing? Should we walk in the dark streets? Or should we simply sit, as long as we know how, with whatever reverence we can conjure, and speak words to your soon-to-be forgotten bones? I think about for tall tales and short stories.
Thank you, Macy Webb, and all of our poets. One more time. Just FYI, every poem in here is intentional. Even though we sent them to bookstores all over Kansas and some of Missouri. So we have a few more essayists, our fiction authors, excuse me. We have our fiction authors finally, and that includes Colin Sinclair, and who else is our fiction author? And Mike. Yeah. And Mike Stoll. Come on up. Mike Studs, Colin Sinclair.
I'm not really sure exactly how Mickey included me in this, because it's the meaning of freedom and liberty, but I'm glad she did. You could ask her how. Pat had always wanted to attend his own funeral. Now he could. As if it were a helium-filled balloon, his spirit bobbed up against the vaulted church ceiling. From there, he stared down at his body. Laid out in a walnut casket he had picked, it wore his favorite suit, a pinstripe. The thought that this would serve as his apparel for eternity comforted him. He looked spiffy, not bad for an old guy. A little too much makeup, though, and he needed a shave. Overhearing some muffled drops from those attending the service, he zoomed down to the pews to eavesdrop. As a spirit, he could read minds if it got close enough. Were they thinking about him? Were they reliving memories of happy moments with him? Memories to cherish throughout a lifetime? As he listened to the garbled thoughts, he felt shocked. Most of what he heard did not pertain to him at all. One man worried about mowing the front yard of his house that afternoon. He hoped that the forecast rain would not interfere with his plans. Another man was looking forward to the funeral lunch. He wondered if the Altar Society would be serving the fried chicken he liked so much that the local grocery store catered. A member of the Altar Society glanced around the church to estimate the size of the crowd. Did they prepare enough food, desserts, and side dishes to go with the fried chicken? Would everyone stay for the lunch, or instead some leave after the service to return to their jobs? This ability to read people's minds disappointed Pat. It did not live up to his expectations. Had people forgotten why they were there? Did they not realize that he was meant to be the center of attention? After all, it was his funeral. Pat was just about to stop listening when he heard his name mentioned. At last, someone had brought up a memory which involved him. He looked forward to hear it. Finally, Pat got what he deserved. What a lying scumbag. May he rot in hell. Maybe God will forgive him, but I will not. Pat recognized the voice that was speaking those words. It belonged to his longtime adversary. At first, Pat was surprised that the man even bothered to attend his funeral. Quickly, Pat realized the man was there only to gloat and ensure that Pat was dead. Well, I'll give him something to mourn. Summoning all his strength, he focused. A minute later, fanning himself with a service booklet, one woman muttered, "Phew, what does that smell? Did someone fart?" Quickly, though, the sweet scent of incense overpowered it. Next, Pat made the overhead lights in the church flicker and the sound system squeak. Must be a problem with the electrical wiring, another attendant thought. I'll speak to the church maintenance crew about after the funeral. Pat's efforts to haunt the crowd of the church were falling short. Nonetheless, he gave it one last try with a tremendous blast of energy. As if he were a balloon pricked by a needle, he burst asunder, blew up completely. The woman who early noticed the disagreeable smell thought, what is that I heard? It sounded like a loud pop. Is something wrong with my hearing aid? She was more sensitive to such things, more perceptive. No one else noticed. No one else cared.
That's a tough act to follow. I am Colin Sinclair, obviously. This is a tongue-in-cheek piece. Everyone else wrote really serious things for this issue. And I didn't think we were in a space in this country to take this as seriously as everyone else did. I wanted something more dark humor. I feel kind of bad about that now. Everyone else took this prompt completely at face value. This is called Prince Charlie. I remember it like it was yesterday. Despite the long war that followed, it was the moment which ended the reign of Hanoverian tyranny and brought forth an age of liberty in which I shall take my last breath. My father was the most valiant Highland kern, but was shot and killed at the horror that was Culloden at the wee age of 3. I joined my brothers and uncles in exile among the Catholic forces gathered in France for another chance to shed English blood. We waited 28 long years for that day to come, and while we waited, the tyranny of the Georgian house ran unchecked around the world. The merchants and farmers in North America, once valued and loyal subjects, were treated no better than slaves by young George's parliament. However, they refused to lie down and take it like dogs. So they did what we had done and bit down on King George's hand. After that, fate and Ben Franklin set it all in motion. Along with 300 other angry Scotsmen, armed with French rifles and our memories of Highland liberty, I sailed for Philadelphia not 6 months later. We disembarked in Baltimore and found to our amazement and honor that Prince Charlie had arrived ahead of us,
flanked by the wild geese. What a sight he was, resplendent in his armor, and no longer afraid of death as he had been in his youth. These days, all men believed in the new American saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." Scot and Irishman formed a combined battalion, grim in their tartan and bonnets, and fiercer than any company of native scouts that the colonists had seen in their lifetime. We were the vanguard of their salvation. And thus we marched over city and country, right into the very heart of Philadelphia. Aye, it was a surreal sight, those plain-dressed Quakers waving their hats at us in joy and ecstasy as we escorted the Prince to Independence Hall. The streets echoed with old Gaelic songs as we approached the grand old structure. For a moment, we all stood in anticipation. Perhaps these Americans would betray us and we would die here. Or perhaps the old age of man would really die beneath Charlie's sword. In the center of the square stood old Franklin, next to a grand master of masons. Prince Charlie dismounted and strode up to them. Showing his great humility, he kneeled as instructed. I remember the words of the Grand Master still. Wisdom comes from humility, strength from righteousness, and liberty reigns above all. You, Charles Edward Louis Sylvester Maria Stuart, have shown all these things. Now die and be reborn. Stand as Charles I, Lord Protector of the 13 colonies, Stratholder of America and King of Exiles. At that moment, the prince lifted his sword high into the air and gave a shout like the world had not seen since the reign of Alexander. Emotion overcame many of us, and we fired our muskets as if to kill the lingering spirits of tyranny which lived in the air. The celebrations were a blur of whiskey and song, but that moment, that most important moment in the history of the new world and the new age, will live within my memory just as it happened yesterday. Every day as I gaze across the fields of my little Virginia farm, I thank Prince Charlie for my life and my liberty.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everybody. I hope you won't feel a need to leave right away. We have a chance to mingle. Oh, Brian, you want to come read?
Yeah.
Yeah, come on, Yay! Yay! And when we do stop, though, feel free to mingle. If you haven't gotten a book, there's books over there on the table, and again, we have some old journals, and there's some snacks and stuff, so check it out.
Where's the new copy?
I'll bring you one.
Thanks. Sorry, I just need to.
No worries. I'm gonna leave it out.
Yeah. I did have one once, I did. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll read this one. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to actually.
74.
It's really nice to be back doing this again, and thanks to Mickey and the team who do this all the time, and I just love it when this comes out and seeing everybody who's in here. Speaking to this? Yeah. Okay. So this is called The Old Dictator. Hard to think that this fragile old man in adult diaper and nightgown, who doesn't know what day it is, or who the pretty girl is who holds his hand and cries. Hard to think that he did so much killing that he seemed to take a pleasure in it. A lot of blood on his shaky hands. Now he can only eat soft food, soup with bread in it, yogurt, or meat and vegetables put through a blender. Ask him about his crimes, and he'll not hear a word. He thinks that the girl, his granddaughter, is his first love, Flora, and he keeps telling her how much he loves her, how they will get married as soon as he gets out of the army, as soon as they have beaten back their enemies. Many people in his country want to hang him for his crimes, but they'd not be hanging the dictator, just this old man who pisses himself, who sits in the sunshine through his window and smiles, smiles, smiles. So, Margaret Thatcher was kind of like that in the end. This really kind of tough woman, and in the end she was a sort of fragile old lady who didn't really know what was going on around her. I think that some of you know John Musgrave, the Vietnam veteran, featured in the Ken Burns documentary called Vietnam. And we lost John this summer, and I'd like to read one of his poems. Yeah. So John was in Vietnam, and he was just one of the great speakers about Vietnam and sort of what it meant to this country. I'm sure some of you came across him, and he was just such a great speaker and a great friend, and such a loss really. And yeah, I know these poems so well. I heard him speak so many times, but I'd like to read one of John's poems as my second poem, and this is called "A Million Ways to Die." There were a million ways to die in Vietnam. There were booby traps and mines, Japanese mines from World War II, French mines from the First Indochina War, Vietnamese mines, and American mines. There were dud bombs, artillery shells, and hand grenades from all the wars that could awake with just a touch. There were pistols, rifles, machine guns, flamethrowers, grenade launchers, that in a moment's inattention could stop your clock. There was friendly fire, mortar and artillery rounds that fell short, tanks, dusters, and quad 50s that shot at the wrong people, and bombs dropped in the wrong place. There were deadly tropical diseases, fevers with no names, save the place where you got them, and more strains of malaria than pills could protect you from. There was the monsoon season when it rained for weeks and little streams became raging rivers you had to cross, loaded down with gear, and flooded foxholes that could drown a wounded man. There were trucks, tanks, and Amtraks that could run over you, helicopters and planes that could crash. There were wild elephants and snakes, the little bamboo viper, cobras and boa constrictors. And there were tigers. No shit, tigers. Oh my. Oh yeah, there was the North Vietnamese army, sappers, snipers, mortar and artillery men, and the average everyday boy doi with a belly full of hate and an AK-47, the master of the horseshoe ambush. I hadn't been in country very long when I decided that I was going to make it home alive, that I wasn't going to make it home alive. What with the odds being what they were, and better Marines than me dying every day. So at the ripe old age of 18, I accepted my mortality, and I stopped worrying about whether I would die there or not. I did, however, spend a great deal of time worrying about how I would die. From John Musgrave.
Thank you to Brian Dolder. Thank you to Brian Dolder, and thank you to
Everybody for reading today. It was wonderful to have this, and I believe I've heard from everyone that has told me about reading this journal. This is our best one yet. So, again, thanks for contributing. Mingle, enjoy some snacks, and thanks for coming today.
I was like, you're like, oh, yeah. Yeah. What are you up to? Too much work. Yeah, me too. Between work I get paid for and volunteer positions, stuff to the president. You would not believe the bizarre emails you get when the president appears behind your name in any way on LinkedIn. Every week I get like 4 offers from people asking me to buy APT for like millions of dollars. And I'm like, what's APT? The Association for Preservation Technology International. It's a nonprofit, professional association of old building nerds like me. And I'm like, really? You want to buy APT for $10 million? Is it a scam? Like what? I think it's people using AI. Like people, there's like a whole industry of people who are brokers for firms. This is how traders do this. Is they use brokers to find architecture firms that are for sale to buy up. Oh, so they think you're an architect? Yeah, so I think